So my name is Matthew Baration, and this is my Management 310 Session 5 assignment. So as you can see here, we're doing a real estate financial analysis. So when we look at the property details in our mission, the mission is that I'm a 28-year-old who is making $85K a year, and I'm tired of paying $2,200 a month in rent. And I've recently found a condo that I end up really liking a lot. So, the property details of, this condo is that the purchase price is $425,000, HOA fees being $350 a month. Property taxes are $5,100 annually, the insurance being $1,200 annually. Our current mortgage rates are 6.8%, 30 years being fixed, and the fact that I have $95,000 saved for a down payment and closing costs, and the closing costs are estimated to be at $12,000. I'm not moving in 5 years, but maybe after 5 years I will. And I plan to put down 20% as a down payment. A few alternative scenarios that we must consider is that my landlord offered to lock my rent at $25, 5 years if I release the lease now. Similar condos in the building rent for about $2,600 a month, and the condo price in my area have appreciated 4% annually over this past 10 years. In addition, I can get a 6.5% for 30 years fixed mortgage if I pay 2 points. So after we have all the information, we can now look at the define, discover, first step of the driver framework. And in this case, it's what is the real estate decision and what are the true costs, and if there's any other costs that are not just money related. So our real estate decision is really to buy the condo or continue to rent the current apartment that I have. So what are the true costs? There's buying and renting true costs. Our buying true costs would be things such as our purchase price, down payment, closing costs, the mortgage principal and interest, the property taxes, our homeowner's insurance, the HOA fees, maintenance and repairs, opportunity costs of down payment and closing costs, as well as a potential cost of points to lower interest rate if we want to pay the points to get down to that 6.5% rate. In terms of renting, the true cost for renting would be our monthly rent, renter's insurance, and also our potential rent increases after that locked-in period. So like non-monetary costs would be things for buying, at least, would be things such as stability and control over our living space when we own our property, having an emotional attachment to this property, as over time you have an emotional attachment to the place that you live. The hassle of home maintenance and repairs, which can be a downside, like things such as mowing the lawn, taking care of the gutters, and just repairs around the house, as well as a market risk. For renting, such costs that aren't monetary would be things such as the flexibility to move easily if we decide to move. The peace of mind with a fixed rent, knowing there's an increase or decrease. However, there is a downside of the lack of control over that living space, because when you rent something, whatever it says in the lease in the clause, you can't manipulate the property outside of whatever is listed. So now we can move on to our represent stage, part of the framework being to map out all of our cash flows and not just our obvious ones. So for example, cash flows for our buying scenario being year 0 is our purchase. We put a down payment of say $85K with a closing cost of $12K and the loan amount being $340. So if we move on to our annual cash flows, being from years 1 to 5 with that mortgage payment, it need to be calculated based on that $340,000 loan at 6.8% or 6.5 for that 30-year period. With our property taxes, being minus $5,100 or $5,100, my bad. Homeowner insurance sitting at $1,200, HOA fees sitting at $4,200, 30 being $350 times 12. With our maintenance and repairs, being estimated at about $4,250, and our opportunity costs of a down payment and closing costs would need to be estimated. So first of all, we move on to the cash flows at sale, being year 5. The sale price would need to be estimated based on that appreciation. Our selling costs estimated as well. And we can move on to the cash flows for renting scenarios, so years 0 to 5. So our monthly rent would be $2,200 times 12, being $26,400. And for the first year, if we're not signing the lease, it would be $2,500 times 12, being $30,000. That would be if we sign the 5-year lease. Our renter's insurance estimated, being about 240, and our opportunity costs and closing costs, being the things that are invested, would be the return on the 97,000 that was not used for the buying. So with the actual calculation of this mortgage payment, we have to first install, Numpy Financial, so we can have the Numpy packages that you use. Like here, we had our loan amount listed, the interest rate being 6.8%, and our interest rate monthly being that interest rate annual divided by 12, with the loan term years being 30, as previously mentioned, as well as our loan term months, being the years times 12. So we move on to using this Numpy Financial in order to calculate our monthly payment. It spits out estimated annual mortgage payment at 6.8%. And if we were to do it with a 6.5% rate, same thing, it would go through here and then print it out for us, where the estimated annual mortgage payment at 6.8% of a rate would be $26,598.55 versus the estimated annual mortgage payment at 6.5% being $25,788.38. And the cost of getting points down to that 6.5% rate would be $6,800. So now we can move on to the implementation of building a comprehensive model that includes the taxes, maintenance, and opportunity costs. So first thing we want to do is assume the annual maintenance is 1% of the property value, which has been done. And then we can assume the opportunity cost of down payment and closing costs is a 5% annual return, which then is listed there. Then we have our calculation of the future value of the initial investment after 5 years. So after we have all these things you've calculated or assumed with previously up here, we can move on to our different scenario calculations. With the true monthly cost of owning year one, we can assume at 6.8% interest rate with no points. We can use a pre-calculated monthly mortgage payment from that previous cell to then get our estimated true monthly cost of owning during that year one. So now we're over here trying to calculate our equity built over this 5-year period. So the first thing we need to do is calculate that remaining mortgage balance after that 5-year period, and that would be 60 months. From there, we can then have our property value after 5 years, assuming that's 4% in annual appreciation. Next thing would be finding out the equity built after that 5-year period, which then gets spit out the bottom. So for another buying scenario calculation would be with the points for that 6.5% interest rate, where everything else here is assumed it's the same thing. The difference here is to calculate equity and fight with that interest, which then gets spit out the bottom. Another scenario would be when if we decide to rent instead of buy. We need our true monthly cost of renting. Assume it's locked in rent of $2,500, which then gets spit out the bottom. We have our true monthly cost of renting. Again, assuming the current rent is $2,200, and with potential increases. So that's why we have it listed there. And the opportunity cost of not buying. The return on that $97,000 is also figured out. So after all this has been said and done, our buying scenario with that 6.8% interest rate, the estimated true monthly cost of owning in that year one would be $34,405.71. And the property value that's estimated after that 5-year period would be $517,000 roughly. And our estimated remaining mortgage balance after that 5 years is 6.8. At 6.8 is minus so 319,000 give or take, rounding it. With our estimated equity built after 5 years being 197,000.7, we'll call it. And so on to the next buying scenario with the points with the 6.5% interest. Our estimated true monthly cost of owning during that year one is $33.78, with the cost of the points, like we said previously, being $6,800. Our estimated remaining mortgage balance after that 5 years would be $318,000, a little bit over, give or take. And the estimated equity built after that 5-year period would be $198,000.8 dollars. So a renting scenario, if we chose to do that, would spit out being the estimated true monthly cost of renting at $25.20. The estimated true monthly cost of renting, current at $2,200, being just be $2,200. Our estimated annual opportunity cost of not buying, say investing that $97,000 at 5%, would be $48.50. and the estimated future value of 97,000 invested at 5% over 5 years would be $123.8 dollars. So after we have all those calculations, now we can move on to our validation stage, where we compare with online calculators and real estate websites. For the mortgage calculators, I ended up using NerdWallet for this, but Bankrate's another one that can be used to verify that monthly mortgage payment for both interest rates. So I used the calculator used the standard monthly fixed rate mortgage payment formula, in which the calculation of the monthly payment at the 6.8% interest rate is 2216.55, which is the same as what our model had put out. And when we look at the 6.5% interest rate, the calculated monthly payment is 2149.03, which again, both are identical to our model's estimations, so that's a good thing. And the next thing would be our comparison of those key estimates. So like true cost, monthly cost, and estimated equity, well, I use Zillow for those calculations, and that the model's calculation, or the Zillow model calculation, the true monthly cost of owning would be 3445.71. The equity built after that 5-year period would be $197,000.7. And with the Zillow calculation, it would end up being 3450, and then the equity built is $198,000. So this first part was ours, and then this second part was the Zillow calculations. Just putting them right here, just so you could see what they look like. So the next thing, we move on to our evolve step, which in how sensitive is our decision to rate changes or price appreciation. So the first scenario that we have would be a higher interest rate. So we, for example, I used 7% with an original appreciation of 4%, in which the calculations occur here and spits it out at the bottom at the end of the code. Our second scenario was a lower appreciation rate of 2% and an original interest rate of 6.8. So just something to mention, the true monthly cost remains the same as that original 6.8% scenario. Moving on to our third scenario, we'd have the higher appreciation rate, 6%, and our original interest rate sitting at 6.8%. Again, true monthly costs remains the same as the original 6.8 scenario. And then we can move on to our scenario 4, which being the lower interest rate. So we'll say, like I use 6 for this example, and our appreciation, original appreciation of 4%. So after all that, with the 7% interest in our scenario 1, our estimated true monthly cost of owning would be 3491.2. Estimated equity built over 5 years is 197,000. A little bit over that. For that second scenario, we can take a look at the estimated true monthly cost of owning being 3445.71, and our estimated property value after that 5-year period. Keep in mind this is with a 2% appreciation, sits at $469,234.34. And our estimated equity built after that 5-year period, with the 6.8% interest and 2% appreciation, is $149,888.54. Again, for scenario 3, this has a 6.8% interest and a 6% appreciation. The estimated true monthly cost of owning, 3445.71, similar to before. Property value that's estimated after that 5-year period is $568,745.87, with our estimated equity built after that 5-year period being $249,392.07. And our last scenario, I know it's said a lot of numbers, recently. 6% interest, 4% appreciation. Estimated true monthly cost of owning is at $3267.64, with the estimated equity, being a little over 200,000. So now we can finally move on to the last portion, which is reflect, which we can answer some of the exploratory questions that we had that were given to us. So what hidden costs or benefits had surprised me? There's a few hidden costs and benefits that I had, but I will list about 2. And the first one being is ongoing expense of maintenance and repairs, which can be unpredictable and significant. Obviously, we estimated it to be 1%, but it can vary depending on the property, whether the state of the property, whether it needs work, whether it be natural disasters, whatever it may be. A hidden benefit of owning, though, is potential for building equity through that mortgage principal payments and property appreciation. So later on, you'll be able to sell it for a lot. However, now we can move on to the how do we think or decide on buying versus renting. There's a few steps you can have in here. There's 6 of them listed. So, for example, first one is to analyze our true costs of both scenarios of renting versus buying. Then we want to consider how long, our time horizon. So basically, how long are we staying in a period for a certain amount of time? So, for example, with renting, if we're going to be renting, it makes sense that we'd be staying there for a short period of time versus buying would be a lot more appropriate for a longer, period of time, like over a lot of years. Next thing we want to do is evaluate the market conditions. So the local area, what are the appreciation rates of the properties, the market trends for rentals, and the economic, outlook of that area. Next thing would be assess our financial situation, determine how much money we have on hand to put down for a mortgage payment, and just where we're at with money being able to be spent, which just kind of be a given. So next one would be to factor in non-monetary aspects. So for example, with buying, you have stability and the ability to customize your living space. With renting, you do have flexibility and you have fewer responsibilities for maintenance, as it's usually taken care of. We have the last one would be perform a sensitivity analysis, which is used in the evolve step to see how the changes in interest rates, appreciation rates, and other factors will impact our financial outcome, whether we decide to buy or not. This is all done just to understand the risks involved. So on to the last question, being what are points and should we consider them? Well, mortgage points, be just a discount point. Will be a fee that's directly paid to the lender at a closing in exchange for a reduced interest rate on our mortgage. So 1 point is usually costs about 1% of the loan amount. Allows us basically to buy down our interest rate, and it gives us a lower monthly mortgage payments over the life of that loan. So the question of whether we should consider them or not comes down to how long we decide to stay in the home. So we need to calculate our break-even point. So if we decide to stay longer in the home, longer than the break-even point, paying points will be able to save us money in the long run. However, the opposite is true, where if we decide to move for the break-even point, there's really not a lot of benefit financially to this. So, for example, in this scenario, paying these 2 points would cost us $6,800 and reduce our annual mortgage from about $26.6 thousand to $25.8 thousand. And that'd save us about $810 a year, or $67.51 a month. Break-even point is approximately 8.5 years. So the plan that we have, or I have, is to potentially move after that 5-year period. Paying the points would not really do anything for me and would not really provide me any financial benefit. But like I said earlier, if we stay there longer than the break-even point, then it makes sense. So if I do end up staying there for over 8.4 years, this would be something that would be worth considering.